So now we are very excited to move on to our panel discussion on learning from smart cities initiative across the world. Before we begin the panel discussion, we would like to mention that this session will be conducted in a hybrid format, with some of our speakers joining us virtually and others in person. We feel to be able to connect with experts from around the world through the power of technology. First, let me introduce our moderator, Mr. Daniel Chung, Vice President of Smart City Consortium. Welcome. Next, let's have our speaker once again. Oh. Welcome, Mr. Daniel Chen. Okay, next, we will have our speaker on the stage again, including Mr. Gilad Rosenwag from MIT DesignX. Let's put your hands together for Mr. Rosenwag. Okay, and next we have Professor Alan Shiaradia from University of Hong Kong. Welcome. Okay, and Mr. Lee Yunsheng, once again back on the stage. Welcome. And now on our virtual stage, we have Dr. Tak Soon, Executive Director, Digital Mobility at NEOM. Hello, welcome, Dr. Tak Yoon. And then we have Mr. Dominic Johan from Cargo Souterrain and Mr. Reiki Sanhu from Urban Airport Limited. And if any of you have any questions that would like to ask our panelists, please scan the QR code on the slide and type in your questions, and our panelists will try their best to answer your questions during the Q&A session. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Kimmy. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you feeling excited? Yes, thank you. All right, great. Thank you for all the panel. We have a wonderful 6 international panelists today, from all the way from air down to underground, to urban planner, designers, to transport and technology experts. First of all, we've heard a lot of great ideas and new technologies today. One of the main challenge for many people is smart cities seems to be very multidisciplinary, and it means different things for different people. So I guess one of the questions I would like to at least invite some of the panel on stage with me right now is, also online, perhaps what would be the, what do you call as a success for a smart city? Perhaps start with you, Gilad. You're right next to me.
Sure. So the success of a smart city is measured in the success of the citizens in it, right? So it's what metrics do we place on a smart city? Do we expect, it could be at the global level, at the environmental level, do we want to see clean air? Do we want to see a reduction in CO2? And can that smart city achieve it? Well, that's one way to measure success. Are we going to see that the people in the city have more access to, first of all, to the things they need, like clean water and food, but also access to more joyful amenities in a city? And I think that is just as important, beyond, of course, the basics. Education, of course, and also this ability to grow as a city and to have the self-determination of a city. I think these are all important. So smart cities provides, yes, amenities and the basic needs and the basic functions to travel or to move goods, but there's also a key element of democratization and accessibility that can be measured in a smart city.
Thank you. I think one of the key words in your particular presentation was resilience. Resilience, right. Professor?
I think what we talked about was different sector in the so we see okay, we have climate change maybe as a primary aspect. We talked a lot about transport and so on, but somehow there's as Gilad said, I mean there's natural environment, education, mobility, and all those aspects. What I will add in a way is like understanding, I mean, what are the resources that we use as input, what are the process we use in a way, what are the success, how do we, we say, replicate success, how we duplicate success, how we know, how we reduce the use of resource. And indeed, I mean, we are all focused on impact, whether the impact are about people, but as well, not only people, but as well other aspects of the natural environment.
Thank you, Professor. YS, please.
Oh, so in fact, I have 3 points. So the first point would be better living for the people. The second would be better economy for the entire country as a whole. The third would be better governance to ensure that everything runs smoothly in the country itself. However, in order to be successful in all this, actually it takes a lot of participants to make it successful. So you need the top dog of the government as one. Then you require the ecosystem partners like everyone here. Then the citizens to also participate to actually share what are the pain points of the city, so that everything reflected could be achieved to ensure that everything is successful.
Sure. Let's thank you, YS. Let's move on to Dr. Ted Soon. Ted is formerly the CIO of MTR Hong Kong. Actually, have been serving Hong Kong citizens for a very long time. So good to see you, Ted. You're dialing in from Saudi Arabia, correct? We can't hear you. Can you try again?
On mute.
Saudi Arabia now.
Okay,
can
good.
You hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, go ahead, Ted. What is success to you in a smart city?
I think most of the success factors that also mentioned by the previous 3 speakers, but I guess it also mainly depends on the objective and the goals of that smart city. And also quite often that we also have to remember that usually we have a forecast of the population of people that can move into the city, okay? And also imagine that whatever we want to build for a smart city, that will incur a lot of funding. Okay, so I guess it's whether we can really meet the budget, whether it's over budget or under budget, and also whether we can build the smart city on time and have the right number of population and mix of population moving into that particular smart city. I mean, when I am talking about a brand new smart city.
Yeah, because a brand new smart city like what you're building at NEOM is the capital budget it's huge.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Dominic Kaiohan, please share with us what do you see as a smart city success?
Look, for us, the #1 goal is quality of life. That the cities that we live in are for us humans the right place to foster, to have our own personal development and the growth that we want to have. At the same time, we need to cater to ever more people, right? And the growth of the economy. And so these 2 things seem not to match, right? You want to grow the economy, at the same time you grow the population, you grow everything that's happening in the city, but you still want to have quality of life. And for that to be possible, we need to innovate what space we need for what on this planet. And we have chosen the underground to be space for freight, and because they don't need a pretty view. I think Ricky is doing the right thing to move people up in the air, because they need a good view and they need to be quickly moving. So I feel that quality of life is the most important factor for us all, for smart cities.
Great, thank you. And Ricky?
Hi guys, yeah, look, I mean, smart cities, for me, I used to work as an architect for 16 years. I actually studied with Gilad. I had the privilege to do that. But I've left architecture to focus on what I think is the most important thing, which is transportation. And so those bits between the buildings, which are very smart, we've made buildings very, very smart, but what we need to do is make the bits in between the buildings smart and smarter for existing buildings, existing cities. and make them ultra smart for TED and NEOM and other new city developments that are happening around the world. And if we can do that, then we have cleaner air. We can't use the existing city arteries as a model for the future, where we just load them up with cargo, load them up with vans and trucks. That's not smart. So clean air is the #1 goal for me.
Seems like everything, some of these notions are very connected, right? Moving cargo, moving people, all comes to maybe also giving us clean air, sustainable use of resources, and then perhaps better, bigger smile from every one of us, right? Well, now let's move on to some intensive topics because we have a lot of challenges alongside with new cities like Neon, the Lion City with a very big, huge capital budget versus a city like Hong Kong or maybe Singapore, right, where we have a lot of confinement in terms of restrictions or codes to cover. Maybe start with Ted, a question for you. Building a new city, what do you think that the new challenges that will become, one of your major problems for you?
Okay. Yeah, I guess there are quite some challenges when we start building a smart city from scratch. So I guess it's the locations where you really want to build, okay, because that plays a very significant role to determine the success of the smart city in future. And also what will be the goals or aims that you want to build. We just spoke in a few minutes ago, whether you really want to solve some of the urban congestion problem, you want to build zero carbon environment, you want to build 100% renewable energy, recycle water, or you want to build a special economic zone. So again, this is all have to take into consideration. And definitely there have to be a very clear roadmap, because building a smart city from scratch is not just something that you can happen overnight. And also there must be a very good overall strategy and design. Once we have all this considered and in place, then definitely people start building the detailed master plan, what we call the DMP, right? And from there, you can imagine building up a smart city is not only transportation. You have education, you have healthcare, you have tourism, you have energy, you have water, you have all sorts of things for a city to build. So how we're going to integrate all this together is really a big challenge. Each of these sectors or departments, they're working on their own. They're running against the deadline. They all have to run against the deadline, run against the budget. And also, when you build a smart city from scratch, you should not rely on the technology yesterday, nor rely on technology that's available today. You have to think forward. You should have a very forward, strong vision. In 10 years' time, what will be the technology look like? What will be the lifestyle of the people looking for? Okay, so with all this considered, then you have to start working on the detailed plan, start working on the implementation. You can imagine there will be a lot of challenges, technical issues, people issues, resources issues. Right? The challenge is also whether you have the number of resources that come to that particular region to help you to build a smart city, whether you have continuous funding to support the project.
Yeah.
And once you build, whether you can attract the people, investors to come here, and with people moving there. So there are a lot of challenges, and in the end, it's really fun, no baggage when you build a smart city from scratch.
Seems like the budget, the capital budget, the funding, it's always going to be, for such a huge project, right? Dominic, I actually want to direct that same question to you. What are the challenges? Because same as Ricky, because both of you are actually working on new projects, right? Underground, over the air, and with there should be a lot of regulatory hurdles. That's what I personally think. This could be besides the funding part. We actually have from the question and answer bank here that asked for Dominic about, how do you recover the investment that you are, there's 3 billion Swiss franc investment in cargo souterrain. So one of the questions was exactly related to capital budget, but more so, please do share with us, both of you, the regulatory issues as well. I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Well, firstly, on the funding, we need long-term investors that will get an ROI over the long-term infrastructure worth that we build, and that we're talking 30, 40, 50 years, right? And that's one thing. You need to find those long-term investors. We are lucky in that Switzerland is a very stable country, it has a very stable currency, and therefore we can attract those investments maybe a little bit easier. Now, on the regulatory, we are lucky in that we got our own law. So we can build the tunnel wherever we want, as long as we don't go into groundwater or anything like that, natural obstacles, let's say, that we need to care about. But the point where we come out of the tunnel and where we build our vertical hubs into the communes, this is where we have a lot of challenges, because they need to approve the architecture and whatever we do there. And I tell you, nobody wants logistics in their backyard, right? They all want to benefit, they want to consume, but nobody wants to have those trucks. We will have trucks, right? We'll have a few drones, but we'll have a lot of trucks. And that's the main concern we have right now, is to get all the communes. We have 12 hubs for the first 72 kilometers. So there's 12 communes, and they need to understand that they will benefit of this system as well, not just everybody that doesn't have hubs. And we're building, what we do there is we're building jobs, we're creating jobs for those people, high quality jobs, and then the second thing is that, of course, this builds for economic growth as well in those communities, and they will benefit also for better quality of life across those 72 kilometers that we're building. But regulatory is our major challenge right now as we're looking to get the permit to construct. Absolutely right. The funding is easier, really, it is. But the people that will object, that will say, no, I don't want this in my backyard, they can take it up to the Supreme Court, and they will.
Okay.
And that will take time away from the investors to get their ROI.
Okay. Ricky?
Yeah, I think funding is always going to be a challenge when you're integrating new technologies, right? Particularly if you're inventing new technologies. And I think advanced air mobility has seen billions of dollars in the last kind of 3-4 years in aircraft development programs. And those billions of dollars are now starting to realize some fruit, with some of the leading players starting to work towards their certification of the aircraft. So from an advanced air mobility perspective, funding is critical. It's billion-dollar programs to get an aircraft certified. But the regulators like UK Civil Aviation, EASA in Europe, GACA in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the FAA in the US, they're all recognizing that this industry is here, it's coming, it's not going to go away, and they're now starting to invest time, effort, and resources, and reaching out to industry players like us to make sure that they understand what's happening, what we're innovating, and to make sure that the regulators, in a way, are the slave to the innovators, not the other way around. But I think the other challenge, of course, is making sure that cities, municipalities, governments, real estate developers, clients, they understand the value of what these new sustainable transport technologies bring in terms of premium to their property sales, in terms of cleaner air benefits, better productivity, you can get home to work much quicker. All of these benefits are things that we need to still work hard on as an industry to make sure people realize what these benefits are. So yeah, the challenges, the technical challenges, I think, are all easily overcome. I think for us, it's the other way around to Dominic. I think regulatory challenges in the aviation industry, it's one of the safest forms of transportation in the world, if not the safest, in fact. So I'm not worried about that. For us, it's more about funding, to make sure that the aircraft manufacturers don't run out of money, they get their orders, and to make sure the infrastructure providers also don't run out of money, and we get our orders as well. And we do those things in tandem, not the electric car first, and everyone then worries about where they're going to charge the electric car from later.
Right.
So I think for us, it's the other way around to Dominic. But challenges abound, and challenges will be overcome.
Right. Okay. Sounds very good. Now, let's get back to the some of the panelists with me here physically. So, with all these new technologies, Dr. Tak-soon actually mentioned critically that you need to think very, very far ahead of time. I recall that one of the urban planners of Hong Kong, he once told me that he actually planned 30, 40 years ahead. Okay, so with that said, I would like to invite, Gilad, also Professor Alan, to speak about, what do we have to do as urban planners, or designers, to start thinking about what needs to be done, for the future smart city that we our grandchildren will be living in, for example. Please.
So we have to be future ready. So if we know that there's certain technology that's already being developed, and we have two great examples here with cargo souterrain and urban airport, and there's others that are going to require our infrastructure to be different, then we have to start today. Every new building, every new expansion of a city or street or infrastructure project has to take in consideration what that future might be, or already is. Now, we're in this tricky point here where there's
but it's easy to do for new city, right? New subdivision. Very difficult for Wanchai, for example, right? Very difficult.
It's true. It's much harder to rebuild than it is to build brand new. You don't have a carte blanche to do what you want. But we are rebuilding. We are replacing sewers. We are repaving roads. We are putting in new lighting. We're constantly doing this. A big budget of a city is just to keep the city in operating and well maintained. So if we know we have a capital works project to redo the sewers in Wanchai or any city, then we should already be thinking, well, if we're already digging up the road, should we not be putting in infrastructure for transporting goods under the ground as well, right? And if we are already dealing with removing wires from the air and putting electricity underground, or if we know we're going to have an expansion of an airport, well, let's take into consideration the new technology and services that are there. So it's just a matter of cities, especially, but all levels of government really, and all agencies, to be more and more aware of what is out there. I think one of the hardest things will be standardization. Who gets to control what that future will be? I think there's always this, Apple and all the other smartphone operators. They've been in different battles as well, and eventually things do sort out. Governments do have a role here, but it is possible.
That's something that you mentioned, the governance, smart governance, right? Sorry, Gilad. Yeah, you're done. Thank you. Professor Alan, please.
Well, I think that we have to think about where we want to be, and then perhaps think backward and say, okay, if this is what we want to achieve, and that's how we want to live, what do we have to do between now and that kind of position? And I think part of governance is changing a lot of regulation or standard that exist, and those standards probably are 30 or 40 years old, and who is going to change them, review them? I think one of the things we were discussing is in Singapore there's a constant review of standard and regulation every 2-3 years. So that's, I think, maybe a very important way forward.
Thank you. Please, YS, you've been working in Singapore. You have faced with a lot of cities in the ASEAN countries as well. A lot of city administrators look for you to help.
Yes.
Please share.
So in fact, Singapore and Hong Kong is pretty similar. It's not like we can build things from scratch. There's a lot of legacy involved. We can't simply move people out and recreate the city itself. So what we do, first thing first, we need to understand what is already established in your country. So Singapore, that was many years ago, like 8 years ago when I was with the government then, we have this problem whereby updating of street level kind of information. I give you a quick, very easy example. How many street lights do you have? How are they wired underneath? What are the buildings? How much power is it consuming per building? All this information are actually, in fact, are required for urban planners. So without this information, you could barely start. Yes. So the government and the city mayors itself have to do something about it. They need to collect, start doing homeworks to understand what the city actually is ingesting. They need enough data so that ecosystem partners like us could actually help them to do better planning.
Thank you, YS. Actually, I echoed this because at the Smart City Consortium, we've been advocating or at least advising the government that the Hong Kong government should have a chief data officer to be appointed. I actually personally went to the LegCo to present on this subject matter, and I think that part is very important because without the data and some kind of standard, then we cannot really be able to use those data. Now, thank you. So let's go to the other questions, and I would like to direct this because some of the technologies that have been adopted or implemented, we all want to have this wish list or at least roadmap to achieve some kind of climate readiness, environmental sustainability. So I would like to direct this to Dominic and Ricky. How do you think the two technology, I think you did present these in your presentation, but can you specifically tell us, like, how do you think that your company's offering will specifically offer head advantage over the current existing technology per se? Can you address that again for us on the environmental sustainability and climate change related?
Of course. Dominic, if I take this one first.
Please do.
I'm happy if you do.
I think look, advanced air mobility is a very exciting new form of transportation. And I think as cities grow, this kind of, the world's largest urban movement is happening right now, where more and more people are moving to urban centers for better quality lives, where the jobs pay more, and economic and social sustainability. So I think as that happens, we need to make sure, as innovators and technology businesses, that we are enabling the continued productivity of those urban centers. Because if more and more people move to urban centers, and we have more and more traffic, and we can't move around those urban centers, things become unlivable from a health perspective, but also from a productivity perspective. And so it's imperative that, and I agree with Ted, it's imperative that we think ahead. We think for the long term, and that's something which, we've been doing. So Urban Airport has been in this industry since 2016, before anybody else was talking about infrastructure for this type of new transportation technology. Hyundai Motor Group, our partners and investors, they are thinking about this, and they're thinking about it in a very, very long-term kind of view. And so, in terms of nearest state of the art, helicopters for us, as a population, is something that we know, but it's noisy. It's polluting from a noise perspective, but also from its fuel. It's not electric, and they're relatively unsafe because of their single propeller. Now, eVTOL, they have multiple propellers, which provides resilience. They're electrically powered, which means they're much quieter. And because they have a fixed wing, all of the, physics is physics, right? So when you have propellers, if you have a wing like the aircraft behind me, that gives you better range. And that then means you can connect towns and cities that are unconnected. You can connect new towns and cities to other hard-to-reach areas, which may be from a tourism perspective. So you can spread social equity to parts of the world that would never be able to get a transport system, right? So you can do that in an affordable way, and we do that by lowering the hurdle from a CapEx perspective, by having infrastructure that enables this transportation, that enables this social economic inclusion, by having affordable, compact infrastructure. And I think that that's the key, and that's where innovation comes in, and that's what we need to all focus on to make sure that our cities, as they grow, they remain livable, and they remain, you know, economic drivers for our countries.
Great, thank you. Dominic?
So at the Cargo Souterrain, we get this question a lot, right? How can you build such a large infrastructure with all of this concrete, etc., and still be more sustainable than what we've got already? You know, with compare this to already existing infrastructure that's already been built. We have seen in the life cycle assessment that over the long term, even including non-fossil fuel trucks, so electric trucks, or including rail, we still have the benefit of being in a dedicated environment, and that's for both renewable energy consumption that we have, as well as for the emissions that we reduce, including noise, etc., that we have a better footprint. But you have to look at the long term, and we have to be very careful as to what materials we use and where we get the energy from. We will use about 10% of the Swiss energy consumption will be just Cargo Souterrain. We're already today investing into such renewable energy plants that we will benefit directly of. So we are a prosumer of energy, if you want. Otherwise, we can't have a better footprint.
Got it. Ted, do you have anything to add here in terms of, you know, try to achieve climate, you know, sustainability and environmental concerns?
Yeah, I guess we all have to consider, as I said before, a longer-term vision. Everything we put into design must be sustainable. Okay, and nowadays we all look at the climate changes happening everywhere in the world. So maybe we should also take into consideration of some advanced technology working together with different fields of people, look into some microclimate control for that particular smart city location. Excellent,
great. Okay, so the next question that I would have for everyone on the you know, here on the floor, but also related to business innovations, and obviously sustainable new city technologies, all related innovations. And I would like to actually call out one of our colleagues here, Dan Wong, you're here? Dan, please, thank you. Dan was actually one of the brainchild of this whole panel, whole Smart City Forum. Dan actually works on as a general manager for global innovations for MTR, a colleague of Dr. Tek Soon before. One of the questions I want to direct to some of you and also to the panel here is, with all this new business model, right? New business model. Obviously, you need to generate income. You need a lot of capital investment, and then you need to satisfy the customers, right? How do you think these new business model are easily achieved? Especially to maybe Dr. Tek Soon, maybe you can address that, because you are raising building a totally built a new city. You must have to see a lot of startups, right? You must have to adopt a lot of new kind of business model, right? Can you share with us how you actually are willing to accept all these business startups innovations?
Yeah, actually, there are quite a number of startup JV that we formed with startup in Neom. So I guess we look at the technology, the innovation first, okay, and whether they really are expert into this particular area, and whether they really want to invest and work together in Neom, so that we can develop something we always talk about first of its kind. Okay, we don't want to just use the yesterday technology. We really want to build something that can change the environment, that can change the living of human beings. So I guess it's not only on the technology, it's more on, also on their visions about smart city.
Right. So, meaning Neon is ready to listen to all these new wild ideas, you know, from.
We love to. I personally also love to. I've been talking to a lot of different mobility as a service provider, different kinds of AI, autonomous vehicles, such and such. So this is why we all need to with a lot of different people from all over the world.
Nice, great.
We like new ideas.
Great, Gilad, I haven't forgotten you. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten you, because coming from MIT Design X, right? Obviously, you work very hard with your students, or sometimes, you know, cohorts of, you know, established businessmen, whatever, right? How do you think you should, you know, manifest by, you know, changing this mindset? You know, one of the key things is about mindsets changing, you know, people to accept, you know, like people like me, I always want to change things, but I find it very difficult to convince a lot of the stakeholders, right? So please.
So you know, we always say it's really easy, first of all, to have an idea, and it's very hard to implement it. We all have ideas. That's the we can wake up in the morning with those. We then have to do the hard work of convincing other people that this is a good idea, and convincing yourself that you have a good idea. So that's number one. When it comes to working with stakeholders, and actually part of our curriculum, we have a venture building, a venture design program. And it starts with understanding the problem, and quite quickly, though, we encourage, or actually demand of our students or anybody who goes through the program, to engage with stakeholders and to map out who all the stakeholders are, whether it's the partners or governments, regulators, but also the people who would be perhaps your barriers to your, or the elephant in the room, we call it, the people who might stop you. The people who are the disbelievers. And how can you turn disbelievers into believers? How can you turn enemies into allies? You know, that's the way to move forward with any innovation. And definitely if you're going to start doing something that's going to be a game changer in the way we build cities or run society. So it's pretty crucial that people understand who they're working with.
Oh, telling us maybe we should attend your workshops, and we try to change some of the government, government officials, and try to change this. I don't think there's any government officials here today, but this is the message I want to deliver, at least. Please, both of you, maybe you can share, because I think, you know, adopting the new business model sometimes is, not every business model may work in Hong Kong, I must say. I can share an example later, but I think at least the attitude has to be there. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, the innovation is about finding value, new value, that's are sometimes find in place that you don't expect. And we use a framework when we talk to the students, and in the same way, like in design, so we talked about, I mean, what are the value of the stakeholder? How can they align or not align? But what are as well the new value? In particular, I think, I mean, what might be of interest is like something that we take for granted, like intangible value, something that we take as something that is there, but that we cannot put our finger in, and like force the student to evaluate, to kind of say, okay, how would you kind of like provide an evaluation of this? So sometimes we use a dollar value, but it's not a dollar value that go in a pocket. It's like what we call a shadow value in a way, and allow
the intangibles.
Yeah, intangible. And this is a very important one, because I think if we were to reduce the use of resource, I mean, it might mean that we consume less resource. Does that mean that we get poorer? Or are we developing new value which are intangible and make them kind of showing that those values are important, are quantifiable, are kind of like of magnitude, and so are we making people richer in a way by demonstrating and then showing how those things kind of like stack up.
Right. YS?
For myself would be success cases, sharing of success cases, as well as doing proof of concepts with governments to show that your solution actually truly works. Yeah, that coming from the government, actually, we don't want to spend a lot of money, but yet the outcome didn't meet our expectation. I believe that even in Hong Kong, it's very difficult to...
It's slowly moving, though. I must give credit. Like, I like your idea.
Yes.
Proof of concepts were never seen in 5 years ago, but in the last 3-4 years, we have seen some changes in Hong Kong, where both the EMSD and the CIO office have actually experiment with small success, and obviously small success bring bigger success, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Just want to remind some of the audience online and as well as in the crowd with us that you can still ask some questions. I'm going to direct some of the, try to attempt to answer some of the questions. We did already answer some questions that were raised by the audience, but I have one particular one from John that wants to ask Dominic about, here's the question. Dear Dominic, for freight tunnel upon completion, can I assume that revenue derived from contract logistic operator doing the last mile deliverables, deliveries? That was the question for you, Dominic.
So there will be a mix between our own last mile operations and partner. We have a big network of logistics companies that are invested with us. We have a collaborative model. Even competitors now work together, which is great. And brings the innovation also onto the last mile, and definitely we will share some of the business with those partners that we have on the last mile, if I understood the question correctly.
Right. Yeah, my understanding is almost like kind of a telecom service operator where the carrier will resell their airtime of some sort. That's my understanding. Is that similar that in your business plan?
I think so. I must look the company name up, but I think the way that we planned it is very similar. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. We have another question, but it's rather generic. And see what this will be the last question because we want to target and make sure that we finish in about 3 to 5 minutes. The question is for everyone. You can make an attempt. How can a smart city deployment adapt to rapidly changing technology to ensure long-term success? This is the last question, and it's pretty generic. Anyone?
I think that I started to give an answer. Okay, there's fast kind of like technological, and that's kind of, I would say, a sort of push kind of like, the question is like, okay, what's the side of the story? What's the demand side? So the supply side, yes, there's fact change, but 90% of the startup fail. So I think we have to remember those kind of aspects that is part of the story, that, I mean, certain things kind of like appear and disappear rapidly as well.
Yeah.
And then there's a continuous flow of those innovation, some stay, some go, and so on.
Well said, thank you. That's about the time we all have, actually. But I do want to share with you all about the story that I just mentioned about some fail in Hong Kong. I couldn't remember whether it's in London or Denmark. There was a smart tree program. And one of the local property company did invite this operator to operate a smart tree at Hopewell building. But that one failed terribly because after like 2 months, the sensor doesn't work. You know, the LCD monitor that displays supposedly the air quality and all that. The screen went to blue screen, for example. There's a lot of things that didn't work well in Hong Kong, and then it was a good POC that at least allowed the operator to fail fast, or maybe for them to reset or retweet. Now, with that, I really want to thank you for everyone online, Dr. Tak Soon, Dominic, Keohan, Ricky, that you call in at this hour. But I would like to leave with a high note for everyone. And YS did mention that, one of the keywords for Hangzhou, or I can't remember, it was Shenzhen or Hangzhou, that, one of the keywords are serve, learn, and adapt. And I would like to borrow some of the wisdoms, word of wisdom from you guys. It's like, maybe for our smart city, perhaps we should think about rebuild, refresh, restructure, and then, of course, lastly, results. Okay, so it's hopefully that, all these efforts of our conversation, we can actually bring in results. Thank you very much for everyone. I'm your moderator, Daniel, representing Smart City Consortium. And thank you for everyone here with us. This is the last day. And we hope that next time with Business Go Virtual, we can still run another Smart City Forum. And thank you for the organizers for doing all that. And with that, I would like to pass the microphone back to MC Kim Min.
Yes. Please stay put. We want to take a group photo.
Oh, great.
Yes, and as well as our virtual stage speaker.
Right, so we stand up. Thank you.
Say cheese. Thank you so much, and as an appreciation for, we have a certificate. Okay, and I think it's time to say goodbye to our virtual stage speaker. Thank you so much for your contribution today. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.